See it again, folks. Eric Call.
Sadly, my juvenile delinquency really peaked at around the age of 9, and that's when I tried to light my neighborhood on fire, remember? So after that, I settled into a good long period of quiet conformity. I really kind of went off the deep end, and I became a super rule follower. I stayed inside the lines, and I said no to drugs, and got good grades. I became a dork, which is really unfortunate because being a kid and being a teenager is all about rebellion, and it's all about taking risks and stretching your boundaries. It's this rite of passage which I totally missed the boat on. And for this, of course, I blame my family. Because as the youngest in a big family, you have the benefit of seeing the consequences of everybody else's screw-ups. And so, if this isn't enough to scare you straight, I also had the wooden spoon. See, my mother was the one who really maintained order in our overcrowded little house, and the wooden spoon was one of her best tactics for doing this. So, for example, if dinner gets a little too rambunctious, all she has to do is get up from the table, walk over to the cabinet, pull out the wooden spoon, walk back to the table, and place it silently in the middle of the table. No words, just wood. So these things really combine to convince me at a very young age that the way to happiness and success is to just get along and follow the rules. Which I did remarkably well. And so as high school graduation is approaching, I find myself at the top of my class. Now, the benefit of this is I get to give the valedictorian speech at graduation. And the only rule for this is that the speech has to be approved by the principal. I was given a speech advisor. That was my English teacher, Ms. Vernacchio. I loved Ms. Vernacchio. I mean, she was this total free spirit, creative, risk taker, everything that I wasn't kind of person. And despite her best efforts, I write this completely boring, totally predictable graduation speech. And I know she's disappointed, but I'm a rule follower. And my speech is quickly approved by the principal. And the night before graduation, I can just put it all behind me and just focus on having fun with my friends, which in the little town of Norwell and with my dorky friends is not all that easy. So we drive for a long time, and we end up in a barn with 100 other kids, and most importantly, a lot of beer. So this was a good party. And, again, with my friends, it took us about one beer to get totally plastered, and we'd spend the rest of the night flat on our backs reminiscing, I love you, man. And then at some point, somebody brings up the topic of Church Hill. Now, Church Hill was the best sledding hill in Norwell. It's that kind of hill that's steep on all sides, and at the bottom there's these really sharp rocks and big trees. And after a good snowfall, everybody converged there, determined to kill themselves. So it was the perfect sledding hill. But somebody tells me that the guy who owns that land sold it, and they're going to build big houses on it, of course. And so the more we talk about it and the drunker we get, I'm having this sort of drunk Peter Pan moment, and I'm really mad about this. And in my mind, in my sort of beer-induced stupor, Church Hill comes to represent everything that's bad about growing up. It's like the rite of passage of graduation suddenly has this toll of, we're going to lose our childhood innocence. It was a really deep moment. I was very drunk. So I get home later that night. I don't know how I got home or when I got home, but I stumble right up the stairs into my room, close the door. I pick up that perfectly typed, double-spaced speech, and I tear it up into little pieces, and I throw it in the trash can. And then for good measure, I throw up in the trash can. So there's no getting that speech back. But it's okay, because I had another speech. I stayed up all night and in the morning, and I wrote another speech, the speech that I really wanted to give. So 2 hours later, I find myself at graduation, and I'm hungover, and I'm really tired, but I managed to get to the podium at the appropriate time, and I shuffle my papers, and I start to give my unauthorized graduation speech. Last night, I heard that they're going to build houses on Church Hill. Now, this is not the opening line that my principal was looking for. So he gets this panicked look on his face. It's like I dropped a hand grenade down his pants. And he looks over at Ms. Vernacchio with this accusing look. He's like, do you know what the hell's going on here? And she's just got this big grin on her face from ear to ear. And I know what this grin is saying. She's looking at me and she's saying, good for you, dork. And it was good for me. It was a good speech. It was all about, how you have to hold on to your childhood innocence, and you got to, going forward, you got to look for opportunities to take risks, because it's not like childhood. They're not going to just present themselves to you as rocks and trees. And, I'd like to say that I took my own advice and I listened to my own preaching that day. But all I can say is this: when I go to get my diploma, the principal, rather than, giving me a big smile and a pat on the back, which, the rule follower would have gotten, he gives me this really nasty glare. And it was awesome. It was perfect. It was exactly what I needed. And so, I want to stop short of giving myself a big pat on the back, for this big, 5-second moment of rebellion. Because I have to admit that 26 years later, I'm still kind of nervous, because this story is going to get back to my mother. And as far as I know, she's still got that wooden spoon. Thank you.